again.
There are a lot of questions. We did have nerve in here too.
We have two handouts today. These are just copies of the TED Ed questions that might help our conversation. Okay. Okay. All right. If you can send me a reminder, can you email me a reminder? Okay. All right.
So can I just maybe do the questions and bring them in to you?
Yeah, I think that'll work.
Just so you know that I.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Did it.
Yep.
All right.
I don't even know. I feel like it's kind of study for it. So I really nothing yet. I don't know what the sheet has about. I kind of figured out I couldn't. There are my notes from research medical school and I think it's at home. Yes. I have some things in my notes. No, I do not. Parent double T testing for me within subject comparison before after study. So basically you can see if something hasn't stuck on something, which I don't know if any of what you did that. But I guess you could see that in the results. That's the only thing I had down. I know there's a one sample T test. And I can't remember that one.
Like I'm picturing that and coming to look at the video or whatever, and then I think go out with a standpoint to fire
yes, recheck that.
Yeah. So with so we're going down and like into the people figuring out there only like videos and I only did it on we use just the if we're looking at the
I do. This is all 4 years.
Hey, Justin. How you doing? Good. Good.
So you multiply the safe value by the number of people to see the skill. That's the fraction. Yeah.
Hi, Zach.
Yeah, so how that
And Dr. Daly put it outside her office, so I was like, oh, thanks.
Okay, so I've been writing that all morning. So what I
Saying that my mom thinks it's actually every day I'm like, like every time we hit the, oh, it's probably the last time of your day, and it never is.
Hi, Alex.
Sarah said to let you know that she'll be here in like 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. That's okay. Thank you. Hi, Claire. Yeah, a couple of handouts here on the front table.
Oh, that's what we look like we're using for. I have a 3-year folder.
Hey, John.
Hey, Miss, how you doing?
Okay, how you doing?
I'm doing okay, thank you.
Cool sneakers.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got 12:30. Why don't we get started? Good afternoon, S&P. Welcome to the last week before Thanksgiving break. Are we all ready for Thanksgiving break? Yeah? All right. All right. So it should be an interesting week. A couple of events coming up. I thought I'd point to them. First, we have a special discussion going on Thursday at 4:30 in Burton, Oregon, all the way downstairs in room 115. The nerds and PSYC and a bunch of other groups, biological groups and so forth, are going to be having a conversation about fetal alcohol syndrome, which is a leading preventable cause of neurological disorders. And looking forward to having the Vice President of the National Organization on Fetal Alcohol Syndrome Skyping in with us from Washington, D.C., Kathleen Mitchell. We're also going to be joined by a neuroscience group from OSU. Dr. Derek Lindquist and his students will be presenting to us. And we're looking forward to that conversation. And it'll be some presentation time, but also some discussion time. So we hope that you can find time in your busy schedules to come out and join us. We'd love to have you for that discussion. Okay, on Friday, just to remind you, we'll be talking about this video, which is called Here and Now. And I've already got copies available on reserve at the library. So you can go to the circulation desk, take it out. It is 85 minutes long. We'll ask you to look it over, and I'll give you one handout on Wednesday to help you prepare for Friday's conversation. I will also arrange for a couple of the classrooms to show this maybe on Wednesday night and Thursday night. In case you'd rather not go to the library, you just want to come into one of our rooms here in Napa. It'll be on the 4th or 5th floor. I'll let you know room numbers and times and so forth. And people can check it out then. Really a wonderful conversation about cochlear implants. And of course, that will be the topic of conversation during much of the period on the Monday when we come back. Dr. Tangeman will be with us. Dr. Tangeman actually has a cochlear implant. And I'd like to listen to his conversation about his experiences. He's a fairly recent recipient of a cochlear implant, so we'll see how he's doing with those. Okay, and then the other news, of course, is that this coming Wednesday is going to be our final section exam. So let's go to that. We've done this many times before. This will be our 4th section exam, not worth a lot of points, but the format, as always, will be short answers. Okay, and you'll have a lot of content that's relatable to our TED Ed questions. As always, you might be asked to read something and apply what you know. Okay, and how to practice? Well, you've already started your practice for last Friday's TED Ed when you were creating some review questions. Okay, so we'll hope to spend some time today on that as well. All right, so looking forward to our last section exam. Okay, why don't we do this? I'm going to see if I can call up the tone generator. Okay, one of the students or a few of the students asked me if we could do this, and I said yes when we were talking about frequency, but then we ran out of time. So I always like to do this. We'll make a game out of this. We'll ask you to maybe close your eyes and spin around. I'm going to play some really high tones, and we're going to see how we're doing in frequency detection here. So I'll click on play, and you can raise your hand if you hear it, right? And or raise your hand if you don't hear it. I'll put in a couple of practice trials, or rather catch trials, where I might click like over here. You'll hear me clicking, okay? But you wouldn't hear anything coming through. So here's a 440, which I'm sure everybody can hear. Okay? And I'll stop, all right? Can we close our eyes? We'll try it that way, and I'll put in a relatively high frequency. Here comes another trial that might be a catch trial, might be an actual trial. Here we go. Okay, here comes another trial that might be a catch trial or actual. Okay, and you're raising your hand when you can hear the frequency. Okay, stay with me, keep your eyes closed, please. Let's go up to a different frequency, okay, and see how we do. This might be a catch trial or an actual trial. And let's try another one. Here we go. Okay, that was a catch trial. Let's try another one. Here we go. Okay, let's go to another frequency and see how we do. Here we go. Okay, here we go. All right, let's go to another one. See how we do. Oops, excuse me. Here we go. Okay, here we go. And another trial. And here we go. Okay. Let's try just a few more of these. Here we go. Okay, and here we go. Okay, try another one. Okay, why don't you open your eyes? I'll show you what we've got going here. Okay, here is 20,000 hertz. Now I'm going to see if we get it this way. It's playing. Anybody getting it? No? Okay. We'll stop that one. Okay. Two of you, I won't embarrass the two of you, but two of you were really good at hearing this one. Yeah? You getting it? I'm not getting it, by the way. I'm not getting it. Okay. Let's take it down. We'll go down in 2000s. Yeah? You got that one? Some people are making funny faces like, ooh. Okay. So the range typically for humans, I mean, they will tell you that the range would be something like 16 hertz to 22,000 hertz. So just to hear 22,000, I don't even know for sure if that system produces it, right? But in principle, oops, excuse me. It won't go that high. We'll go to 20. Okay, let's work our way on down to 14. Okay, and then let's take a 0 out, and you can see just how low this is. Hope it's not going to blast. Yeah. Okay. All right. So this group is, you've done fairly well. We had some people who were getting up to like maybe 18,000 or so. I think I cut out at about 14,000. And you can imagine really young children can hear way up there. You know, they're going to orient to really high sounds, and they do so very quickly. All right, so that was just a little bit of fun to see how we're going to do on our detection of these different tones. Right? What I would like to do now is get into our conversation for today, and we'll go straight to some TED Ed questions. We'll put you into some groups, and everybody has the TED Ed questions there in front of them. I'll also project them up front. Why don't we give you a couple of minutes to work in small groups, and we'll divide the work this way. Why don't we start out with the speech perception stuff so we make sure that we get it covered before the exam. And usually I start on that side of the room, but this time I'll start over here. People who are on what I'll call the window side of the room, can you please work with your partner on questions 1 through 5? People in the center, can you do 6 through 10? And people who are door side people, can you do 11 through 15, please? Okay? We'll give you a couple of minutes to talk that over with your partner, and then we'll come back to the big group and see what we've got. And if you need questions, I've got them on the front table.
Yeah. I forgot to text you back. Yeah, no, I yeah, right before I my God response was I just like told him and then I agree. More simple, so you know, where they also have an open vocal system where they can combine different systems to make completely new ones.
Right. We have words that stand alone, they're defined as single units. Those animals can only communicate through their general quality of the environment.
And we are on 6, right? What? You're on 6, right? Yeah. Like the stimuli are technically like because like
What I found is
that's what I tried. It was I just said there are 3 formants for each of 3 lines. Yes. But for B, there's a big jump in frequency between the first and the second, and then a small step from the second to third. Whereas 2 is like a small step from 1 to 2, and then a big jump. Yeah, and then I also said that like the long B sound like frequency rises, and then the smooth sound, the frequency like right.
you're adding another function with a portion of the whole graph
Information is directly accessible to the picked up through direct perception. I had to learn on beach. Yeah. I think that was like how we like were able to be like consistent, like like they
this is usable. So the higher energy starts here and as you go up
I didn't see it caught and call it except for your differently. I was like, why? I do things differently, and I was like,
I didn't know. I know.
like, I've been told that's like a Maryland thing, and people in Maryland, like, no one else does.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's weird, but.
I never thought about that one before. I'm like, Dawn, Mary, I don't marry.
Do you? Oh, you don't? Yeah, no, I say it's Dawn, D-O-N is Dawn, and D-A-W-N is Dawn.
Okay. So little.
Yeah, but I sort of like have it, like, sometimes I have it, like, something like a frog. So sometimes I come down and I talk about how my roommate is from New England. She doesn't stereotypically accent, sometimes it comes out really fast. Or maybe she just saying something at your birthday party and it came out like, God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
How people in New England think
Because I just figure, instead of like show, pick
Yeah. A lot of people say like Ohio accent too. Some people in Ohio say basketball. I don't know if I can say basketball. Basketball. Or dad or any word that has that A sound.
The thing that drives me crazy about Ohio is
Oh yeah. I say that.
My sister's from Ohio, and every time I went there, she's just like, oh, we'll walk off, and my sister and I are like, what? It's like every time we have to like stop and think about it.
Okay, I realize you probably haven't made it through, but maybe you got a good start on some of these. So we'll see how we're doing, and we'll come back as a group.
Sorry, but
Okay. Why don't we tune into question one? And of course, anybody from around the room can chime in on this answer. But we have a couple of specialists over here by the window. So question number one: what distinguishes human language from the way other animals communicate? Can we get a couple of ideas on that? There are lots of possible responses here. Okay, we'll go with Meg and then Jake.
Both like the human language and other animal communication, they both have like signals and symbols, but
Okay.
what distinguishes them from one another is that the human language has a lot more symbols, so it makes their language more complex, and they also have humans also have an open global system where they can use different symbols to create a completely new one with a completely different meaning.
Oh, okay, so a couple of good ideas there. One was very quantitative, just the idea that we can have many more symbols, right? So given that we have many more opportunities or many more tools to use, that would distinguish us from the animals, right? Okay, that's certainly true. And we can combine symbols in novel ways. Jake had another possibility.
Yeah, can tag along to that, like we have more complex like sentence structure and syntax.
Yeah, I did want to pick up on syntax because some linguists will tell you that that is the defining feature. They'll say that syntax is really what distinguishes human communication, human language, from other forms of animal communication. They'll say what makes language is really syntax. So then the issue becomes, how do you know what syntax is? Anybody want to help us out with what we mean by syntax? We've all heard of syntax. Okay, thanks, Jake.
Kind of like the function of like the order of the words.
Okay. Yeah, I remember being asked this question when I was in grad school by a linguist, and I said something about the order of words, right? That seems to matter, right? And he thought that was pretty good, but when he said, actually, it's not about the order, I thought it was about the order. He said, no, it's probably more about designation. When we have syntax, we have designation. And what we mean by that is competent users of a language that understand the language's syntax understand who is being designated as a subject and who is being designated as an object in a sentence. They understand what is being designated as the action or the verb. All of those things are specified by the syntax. And you might say something like this: dog bites man, right, has one meaning. Man bites dog has a different meaning. Now, Jake and I might say something like, but you switched the order of the words there. Well, you can play kinds of syntactic games. You can say something like, man bites dog. Man came first there, so man was doing the work, right? But you can also say, man was bitten by dog. So now man comes first, but man is actually the object rather than the subject there. But we all probably understand man was bitten by a dog. In fact, even young children at maybe 4 years old or so, they don't have to be exceptional, they would understand that the man was getting bitten in the second case, even though the word man occurred early on. So when we have syntax, we have a way of designating who's doing what to whom, right? So to speak. And it's really interesting that there's a wonderful story from the history of psychology on Noam Chomsky. How many of us have heard of Noam Chomsky before? Can anybody tell us a little something about Noam Chomsky? What you might remember? It has something to do with syntax. So Noam Chomsky was a chimp that was in B.F. Skinner's lab. And B.F. Skinner was going to try to demonstrate that chimpanzees have language that's almost as good as human language. And he was able to get the chimps to learn lots of different symbols and so forth, but he could never demonstrate that the chimps had syntax. Right? He was never able to demonstrate that the chimp could make a distinction between man bites dog and dog bites man, for example. You could put a picture up of a man and a dog and one of them biting the other, and the chimp would sign, there's a man there, there's a dog, and would sign biting, but would never unambiguously signify or signal who was doing the biting and who was being bitten. And so to this day, we believe that what really makes us distinct is this syntactic designation. But there are other ways too. I mean, clearly our language is richer. We have many more symbols. We can combine novel symbols and so forth. Okay, in the interest of time, why don't we move on? Questions 2 and 3 were really quite challenging. I wasn't sure how to try to get you to use draw to create a spectrogram. It doesn't really lend itself that well to it, but I thought we might take a shot at a spectrogram. So in the spectrogram, of course, we have on the x-axis, well, you tell me, what goes on the x-axis? Time, okay. And what goes on the y-axis? Okay, so people tended to do fairly well on that. Where we got into a little bit of trouble was when we were trying to build one of these. And this is moderately complicated, right? We were talking about how back in the world of Fourier analysis and vision, we talked about adding these odd-numbered harmonics that would eventually get us from a smoothly varying sine wave to a more complicated square wave, right? Just by adding all of these different odd numbers that you see going on here. And you get a feel for it here. And then to try to graph this is really quite challenging. But here's one of the ways that we thought about doing this. We have time on this axis and we have frequency on this axis. So you can imagine that if we were to try to capture something like this, we might have 4 different frequencies. Right? We have the lowest frequency, and then we have something that's 3 times the frequency, 5 times the frequency, 7 times the frequency. Is that okay? We have maybe 4 different frequencies shown here. People following that? Yep. Okay. So we might then have a spectrogram that has 4 elements on it, 4 different frequencies on it. And of these, is it obvious which of these 4 frequencies is the most energetic or has the most amplitude? Maybe it isn't obvious. Which one has the greatest intensity? Yeah, thank you. For the very first one, right? Okay, so we're going to start out dividing it only by itself. Really, we're going to divide by just pi. Okay, and then we're going to take that intensity and we're going to divide it by 3. So 3 times the frequency, 1/3 the intensity. Okay, 5 times the frequency, 1/5 the intensity. 7 times the frequency, 1/7 the intensity. Do people remember that scheme? And I can just jog your memory with something like this. We'll go back way to the beginning of October. Do you remember that we had this? Who remembers this slide? And we're seeing that. So this is like a visual version of, or static version of what we saw a moment ago. Really, really big spike at a relatively low frequency. And then we add another frequency that's higher. It's further out this way. And it's a little bit lower in amplitude. This is the amplitude or intensity over here. Then we can add yet another spike out here that's, again, like 1/5 the intensity, but it's 5 times the frequency. People remember that pattern? Does that sound about right? So what you might then have is if you wanted to try to draw this in Draw 2, using different colors, where we're going to take advantage of Roy G. Biv. And how many people had heard of Roy G. Biv prior to taking this class? Most of us remember that one from a science class, maybe in high school. You might get something like this. Okay? Here's time on this axis. Here's frequency on this axis. And we might just schematize that we have, here's one frequency, then that's 3 times the frequency, 5, 7, and 9 times the frequency. People seeing that? Is that working for us? Okay. And then, as Zach correctly pointed out, this one is the most energetic. So I tried to draw that with red, and in this little scheme that we gave you inside of the TED Ed question, we said we would make the red ones the most energetic, and then we would follow Roy G. Biv after that. So here's a red one. And then this one's going to be less intense, so it's going toward the blue end of the spectrum. It's orange at the moment, then yellow, then green, then blue. That might be one way of cartooning what we're seeing here in this particular animation. But we're putting together all of these little sine waves in an attempt to build up to a square wave. Okay? So that was a tough one. I think that's one of the harder questions that we've had. I just wanted to see if people follow the logic there. Is that working for us? Yep, that we've got 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, okay, just like we had in the other one. Okay? And I've drawn them very crudely to scale, but you get the idea. And then this is the most energetic because red is the most energetic. And then as we get to higher and higher frequencies, they become less and less intense. Okay? So we have less intensities signified by the blue end of the spectrum. Okay. Tough question, but I thought we'd see what we might be able to do with that inside of TED-Ed and inside of Draw 2. Okay, let's move on to question number 4. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about intonation in our voice, right? So consider the sentence, Joe bought flowers for Mary. And now we'll consider the case in which Joe is really cheap, he hates to spend money. Can somebody articulate that for us, or enunciate that, I should say? So we want to take this sentence and change its pronunciation in such a way that would suggest that Joe is really cheap. How would we go about doing that? Thanks, Ray.
So I put the emphasis on the word Joe because if Joe's the one like Joe, like you're incredibly like he actually like did it. So the amplitude I said would be high across the time of frequency for the word Joe being said, and then the amplitude would be lower for bought flowers for Mary.
Okay, so we could say Joe bought flowers for Mary, right? And we almost pause there and we put more emphasis there. Okay. Now what that could mean is that Joe is cheap and we wouldn't expect him to buy flowers for Mary. On the other hand, it could be that Mary is actually married to Michael. Okay, so we wouldn't expect Joe. So that wouldn't actually tell us that Joe is cheap, right? He's not the person who should have been buying flowers for Mary. Should have been somebody else. Okay. So how else might we have? Yeah. Can you have?
I put emphasis on the word bought,
okay,
rather than like if he was cheap, maybe he would like pick them instead. so like Joe bought flowers for Mary.
Okay, right. Okay, and I don't know if we all heard that. So there was a good emphasis over here, and sometimes the frequency is a little bit higher. Joe bought flowers for Mary, so the frequency goes up and the intensity is amplified just a little bit. Who's following that idea? Go. Is that okay? All right. Okay, why don't we keep on rolling and see how we do here. Okay, so you're listening to the video. Thank you for bearing with all the technical problems in that video. We'll talk a little bit about the end of the spectrograms, or which end of the spectrogram's ordinate corresponds to the apex of the basilar membrane. Okay, so we have a spectrogram going this way on our ordinate, okay, and we have the two ends of the basilar membrane. Yeah, thanks.
So the lowest part of the ordinate corresponds to the apex?
The apex, okay, so we have the apical end, okay, and we also have the basal end, or the base end, and we said in an earlier slide that the base is not the base. So down here at the lower frequencies we have the apex, and then you can almost imagine unraveling that snail-shaped cochlea all the way up the ordinate until we get to the base of the structure, which actually is now encoding higher frequencies. Okay, good. We'll keep on rolling here. Can somebody give us a brief description of spectroscopy? It's kind of what we're doing in these speech analyses. We're doing a form of spectroscopy. Can somebody help us out with what that means? Has anybody done spectroscopy in chemistry? Maybe you're taking, okay, all right. So how might you define spectroscopy for us? Okay, thanks, Mike.
So it's used to determine the measurement of the interaction between radiation intensity and voltage.
Okay, all right. So yeah, we're going to typically put out some kind of EM signal, some kind of electromagnetic signal, and we'll see what kinds of things bounce back. And different chemicals have different reflectance properties, right? And so a lot of space agencies will actually not land something on the surface of a celestial body. They won't land on the surface of Mars or the surface of the Moon. They'll send an aircraft, though, around, and they'll shoot some light down at it, and they'll see what bounces back, and they're able to take an analysis of that bounced light and say, well, there must be a certain level of oxygen in this area, and there might be a certain level of carbon in this area. And they're able to tell at the elemental level what what the composition of that structure is, which is pretty cool. It's a little bit like echolocation, but now we're using this for light rather than for sound. So that's the general idea, and we're now making a spectral decomposition of our speech, right? We're decomposing it into all the frequencies that we would have in our everyday language. Okay, in your own words, explain the video's point about genotypes, phenotypes, and speech sounds, and maybe how those are related to metamers. So I think we're now up toward where the center folks were focusing. So, what was our, okay, thanks, Liz.
So basically, the idea that phenotypes and genotypes can be displayed in different ways, like the same set of genes can be displayed in like a couple different ways. And like people, so basically a certain sound can be displayed a few different ways on a spectrum.
Okay, right, so a lot of similarities there. There can be a many-to-one mapping in both cases. That might be the critical insight, that there's a many-to-one mapping. So the idea would be that it could be that you have distinct genotypes that actually put out the same phenotype. There's a many-to-one mapping there. And if you look at the spectrogram, if you're using some kind of spectroscopy, some kind of spectral analysis of our voices, you might hear, for example, the D sounds, and we'll see an example of that in just a moment. You might hear the D sound coming out in a few different syllables. And then you take a spectral analysis and you say, well, I hear D all the time, but something in the spectrum looks quite distinct for this D sound than it does for that D sound, than it does for that D sound, but they all sound like D. So somehow we have this many-to-one mapping even inside of our own heads, where we're taking in unique genotypes, if you will, unique spectral compositions, and we're mapping those to one kind of phonemic output. Maybe the D sound, maybe the W sound, maybe the L sound. Who's following that? Is that working for us? Okay. All right, and then we can take a look at some of these D and do sounds, and people did a nice job with those. I also just point to them inside of the PowerPoint. Bow down to our D's and do's. Here we go. Okay. So kind of interesting, right? And this is highly stylized, and it's a little bit exaggerated, but if you were to listen to this, you would get a pretty good D sound here, you get a pretty good D sound here, and it's pretty obvious that you're going to have different vowel sounds because these long stretches of acoustic energy, which are called formants, right? These horizontal strong energy patches are called formants, and these are the formant transitions that are bringing us up to and those give us clues to consonants, whereas the formants themselves give us clues to vowels. We can see that we're getting a really good D sound out of both of those, but it isn't obvious why you would get that. But that's just the way that is. So it reminds us that we have a many-to-one mapping. Okay. Can somebody help us out with this distinction? In your own words, briefly explain how formants for the long E sound, as in the word be, differ from those for the oo sound, as in the word tooth. So we're not looking for particular frequency numbers, but how do we pick that out, the acoustic energy? Okay, thanks.
For the E sound, there's a big step between the lowest frequency
Okay.
and the middle frequency.
Okay.
And a small step between that frequency and the highest frequency.
Really good. Okay.
And then for the U sound, it's reversed, so there's a small step.
Okay, right, so let's go, thank you. So we'll go, here's the E, and Alexa's correctly saying big step, small step, right, is one of the ways of thinking about that. And even if you go to a child, this is an adult man, and here we have a child, so overall it might be that the children will have unsurprisingly higher frequencies, and yet the pattern remains the same. The happy birthday song is the happy birthday song whether it is played on a tuba or played on a flute. Right? It's the same pattern, even though the overall frequency content is going to be much higher for the flute than it is for the tuba. Same kind of an idea here. We're getting this long E sound with big step, small step, big step, small step, and then we'll go to tooth. We have small step, big step, and small step, big step. Okay? So somehow our ears, with special help from the basilar membrane, is able to encode that, and it's almost as if they're listening to different kinds of chords on a piano. Right? You can imagine that here's my bass note, and I've got a really big step to the second note of my chord, and I have a smaller step between the second and third notes in my chord. When you hear that cluster, there we go. We'll take just a little bit of interruption. So when a siren goes off, in what ways is the energy modulating? It's changing over time. In what ways? Yeah, thanks.
The
our ear.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's one possibility. You can almost think of it physically that way, but we're getting a bit of a frequency modulation. Okay, we're also getting a bit of an amplitude modulation. So both of those are going on. Okay, both amplitude and frequency. Perhaps in part, at least in the old world when that thing was literally spinning, that might have been the source of that amplitude modulation. But back over here to our story, we have big step, small step, big step, small step. So we're hitting the chord over here, and it doesn't really matter whether we hit that chord at the high end of the piano or at the low end of the piano. It's the same chord. Right? Same thing over here, small step, big step, small step, big step, high end or low end, it doesn't matter. Okay? So I think the next question then is on that and the Gibsonian invariant. Does anybody want to help us out with the Gibsonian invariant? This was a big, big idea. Yeah, thanks.
So basically the patterns will like remain the same within like different ranges of frequencies.
Yeah, okay, right, so the patterns are going to be remaining the same. That's the idea about the invariant. It's really a pattern analysis. So I'm now maybe 20 feet away from Tawny, but if and she looks like she always does, but if I go like this, she's now expanding on my retina, but all parts of her are expanding at the same time. So they're all in the same relative positions, right? Here we're about relative positions, big step, small step. It doesn't really matter whether I'm near or far, whether this is on average, high or low. We pick out that pattern. The pattern remains invariant over time. So Gibson's whole idea was maybe perception is about picking up invariants from the environment. And if we can pick those up, then it really wouldn't matter if things are moving away from us or toward us. The pattern will remain consistent. And organisms that can exploit that mathematical relationship will be at an adaptive advantage. Okay. Let's go on to some other ones. There's Gibson. Okay. This is usually one that students like every year, the regional variations. Okay, so I gave a couple of examples in the video. Maybe you can remind us of those, and maybe you have your own regional variations. So, okay, thanks, Melanie.
Okay, I wanted to specifically talk about the cot and caught example.
Okay, very good.
Because this is something that I sort of get grief for a lot, because I'm from Maryland and we say C-O-T and C-A-U-G-H-T differently, but a lot of other people don't. They just pronounce it as cot.
Okay.
But to me, cot is like a cot is something you sleep on, but you like caught a cold or you caught a ball.
Okay, so you put in what I would call a W there. I do too. Okay, I put in a W there. Right. Okay. All right. Some people combine that all into one. Right. All right. So that was our California example, at least according to the same linguist, by the way, who was making that point about syntax, was talking about a restricted phonetic space for that particular sound in California. I actually don't know if that's true or not. I don't know enough Californians to say whether that's true, but he was making that point. Some other regional variations, these are really fun, yeah.
We were talking about like the nasal A.
The nasal A, okay?
And like, I guess like I would say like salad or apple.
Okay, that's the example I always use. When I hear somebody from what I would call the Midwest, I say the word salad, okay, and I hear them saying salad. Okay, salad versus salad. Okay, right? Dr. Matthews, right? I don't know, Matthews. There's just a little bit of it's almost a slightly longer A. It moves toward almost the long A sound, but it doesn't go all the way there. Somebody else, a couple years ago, we had a student whose name was Andy Carlson, but not to be confused with our current Andy Carlson, the music professor. He said he was from Ohio, and he pronounces milk, M-I-L-K, as if it were an E sound there, milk. Okay, no, okay. So some of the Ohioans, right, milk or milk, right? So it's just and I don't know if that's generally true for the short I sound, or if that's just that one particular word that gets that. But that was another regional variation. Something else? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I went to a British school, so a bunch of different
Yeah.
British vowels, like especially the A, they'll say like cot, they'll say cat,
Dots and dats, okay? So the A is very different, okay? I can just pick up on that for a second. When I was a postdoc at Columbia University, I was the only member of my lab who was not from mainland China. Everybody was from mainland China, and I'm from New Jersey, and that was that. And each of those individuals who came here came to the East Coast of the United States when they were immersed in English. And they got to be fairly good at hearing the English language, but they were completely thrown by Southern accents. They couldn't follow it all. And they had trouble following British accents. Interesting, because it just was new to them, right? Whereas other folks who are exposed to British English probably are very much thrown by American English, right? So we have these templates of sounds that we're waiting to hear, and if we don't quite get a match, it's a little disconcerting. Several other hands went up on examples of regional, yes, thanks, Madison.
My grandmother's from West Virginia, so Creek and Crick.
Creek and Crick? Yeah. Oh, okay, now that you said that, I had somebody from Kentucky. Who was that? I'll get her name. She's now in med school. This is from the class of 2008. You draw with a crayon. Okay, what is that?
I have friends that say crown.
Crown, yeah. C-R-O-W-N. Crown, and I draw with a crown. Right, okay, yeah. Rachel Bolkman offered that one. That's who that was. Rachel Bolkman from the S&P class of 2008. Some other ones. Okay, Abby, go ahead.
I know, like, in Louisiana, instead of saying oil, we say old.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
My roommate's from New England, and she doesn't really have the stereotypical New England accent. But one time I don't know what we were talking about, but she said the word garden party, and it came out, or the term garden party, and it came out garden potty. And
Yeah,
I was like, oh,
yeah. No, I appreciate the potty thing, because I was a high school junior when my high school marching band took a trip from New Jersey up to Maine. We had an overnight stay, a couple nights stay. We had an exchange program with them. And the gentleman asked me if I liked patties, and I thought he meant hamburger patties. He was talking about parties. But very gracious host nonetheless. We figured out the accent after a while. Sarah had another one, I think. Did you have your hand up again or no?
I don't know if it's necessarily related to like valve, but like how I say aluminum versus aluminum.
Okay, yeah, sure, right. And that's, it's probably not a vowel thing, but there are those regional differences. Go ahead, Alexa.
I don't actually know where I get it. I have a Canadian family and my parents are from New York, but no one else from Cleveland does this, I don't think. I say both instead of both. Like both this and that, I say both this and that.
Both?
It sounds like there's an L in it.
Oh, both.
And I never
Okay.
realized I did it until I came to college.
Oh, okay. Well, my neighbors from across the street when I was a kid, they had moved into New Jersey from western Pennsylvania. And the town was Washington, and they called it Washington. So there was this hidden R. Like you've got a hidden L in there. Right?
Yeah.
Washington, yeah, okay. Go ahead, yeah.
One that's really close to home, we say Newark, Ohio.
Yeah.
But Newarkians say Newark.
Newark. Okay, so there's Newark. Okay, my parents are from New Jersey. My parents were born in that town. They pronounce it as Newark, as it rhymes with fork, right? Newark is how they say that. Tony, did you have one?
Yeah, I had a friend from high school who was from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Okay.
And they would say like bag and flag instead of bag and stuff.
Okay, so yeah, that A it almost goes all the way to a long A sound. Go ahead, Meg.
I guess, I don't know if this is just a Philadelphia thing, but I definitely hear a lot of people pronounce water.
One more time.
Water.
Wooder?
Yeah, like wood-er. But
Wood-
like,
wood-
they're trying to say water.
Like wood-er.
Yeah, so
okay.
like, just like, hey, can I have some water?
Okay. was that a hand? Was something else? We've got lots of good examples here. Okay, yeah, thanks.
My roommate's from Tennessee, and a lot of things with E's, she'll pronounce, they have like I's to the word pen, she'll say like pin instead.
Pin, okay, all right. So that's the milk thing, but maybe the other way around.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So you get the picture. It's a confusing space to be in, but somehow we get there. Okay, let's see. Yeah, we can do this bit about briefly explain how vowels and consonants. We've kind of already gone over that. Let's see. I did want to spend a little bit of time on one other demonstration. But let's go ahead first and make sure that we've got the ability functions. I think are straightforward. Anybody want to help us out with a learning-based language or language-based learning impairment? We had you watch a little video on that, right? And so, what would the perceptual experience be of the children who have an LLI, a language-based learning impairment? This was the FLAM video. Yeah, thanks.
I guess there's a video that children with LLI have trouble making discriminations as fast as others.
Okay.
Like when people are like talking fast or at like low sound levels, they have a harder time like understanding. So I guess with the FLAMs, like children with LLI would have more trouble discriminating the faster beats.
Okay.
Because they are like such fast paced and it takes longer for them to discriminate.
Yeah, right. And we can think about the faster beats this way, a couple of different ways, but you can play the two hands exactly simultaneously, or we can asynchronize them by just little bits and so forth. And there might be a point at which you can clearly hear an asynchrony. You clearly hear a flam. There are two things happening there one right after the next. And for these children, it might be that they hear something loudly. They can tell that maybe two things are hitting, but they hear them all going simultaneously. So it's interesting, right? They're physically different, but they're not being perceived as different. So it's a type of metamer, a failure of discrimination. Okay. A couple of other demos I wanted to do. This is one I really wanted to make sure we had time for today, and we do. We've talked about the language-based learning impairment as this really time-based impairment, right? That they're grouping things together over wide intervals of time, and they ought not do that. In our earlier demo today, when we started out and we were playing different frequencies, you were all doing better than I was. You can hear frequencies higher than what I can hear. And this is called Presbycusis. And Presbycusis is the age-related loss of hearing that typically affects the high frequencies. So let's get Presbycusis up here just so you can take a look at it. And we'll demonstrate one of the problems associated with Presbycusis, and that'll probably take us through the end of today's session. Okay, so Presbycusis is spelled this way, and I believe it translates roughly to something like old hearing. So this happens to all of us. Believe it or not, it's already happened to you. Young children can hear very, very young children can hear higher frequencies than you can hear. Okay, and you can hear higher frequencies than I can hear. Today is my father's 85th birthday. I can hear frequencies higher than what he can hear. So we're all in the same conveyor belt, right? We're all losing our high end. We're all headed toward presbycusis, age-related hearing loss, and it starts at the high end first. So that's just the way it goes for our species. So why does this matter? Well, as you get to be a little bit older and you're losing your high frequencies, a lot of the information in our spoken language is conveyed by consonants. And consonants tend to be very brief, and they tend to be relatively high frequency. And there's not a lot of energy, right? So the really long bits of energy tend to be the vowels. So if you can imagine listening to my voice, or a moment ago we were taking examples from the class, we could have filtered out all the relative high frequencies, and that would be what it's like to have a relatively advanced case of presbycusis. This is really problematic because so much information is conveyed by the consonants. And linguists will do these really fun demos where they will take a sentence and they will remove from it the vowels and give you the consonants, just on a written page. Or the complementary set of conditions. They will remove the consonants and give you the vowels. Okay? And they ask you to try to figure out what was being said in that sentence, given that you have vowel information but not consonants. Or conversely, given that you have consonant information but not vowels. Okay? And it turns out that people are way better if you have the consonant information, and yet that's exactly what you lose when you've got presbycusis, because generally speaking, if you do a spectroscopy, or if you do spectroscopy on the spoken language, you'll see that there's much more high energy on the consonants than there is on the vowels. So we're getting loud and clear some cues from spoken language that are not all that informative if we've lost the consonants. Who's following that? Okay, so what I'll ask you to do is, can we all jot down on a piece of paper, you can find any blank piece, a relatively short sentence. It might be a saying that a lot of us would know. It wouldn't have to be a saying that a lot of us would know. A moment ago I gave you man bites dog or dog bites man. Just a brief sentence, shorter tends to be better. Let's get to jot it down. And then beneath that we'll ask you to write the same sentence again, but this time leave the consonants in and just put a little blank where the vowels were. Okay? So you might do something like, my first sentence is my dog ate it. Then I'm going to copy that sentence down, but I'll put a little blank wherever, maybe where the vowels were. We can do vowels out and consonants in. Okay. And then you can do the complementary set of conditions where you take out the consonant and leave in the vowel. Any sequence is fine. So here's the original sentence, here's consonants are left in, here's vowels are left in, and you can do those in either order. And we give these to people, and we ask them to try to recover what was this top sentence based on this information, consonant information, high frequencies, generally inaccessible to those with presbycusis, which won't be all of us, or this. And you get some really, really interesting results. I choose this particular sentence because it actually contains only 10 letters, and 5 are vowels and 5 are consonants, if I did my counting. So we kept it even. If you're just randomly generating a sentence, you probably have unequal numbers of vowels and consonants. So they were very careful as experimentalists to make sure that they've controlled for the total number of letters so that you're not skewing the information that way. Do we have anybody who's willing to come up and put maybe, why don't we have, it's usually the most fun when you're only given the vowels. Can we get a couple of folks to come up and jot down their vowel-only sentence, and we'll see if the rest of us can unpack it? Okay, thanks, Liz. Why don't you come on up? And we can have maybe somebody on the other side. We'll get 2 of them up here. So vowels, just the vowels, and then you can put the blanks in. Okay? Somebody else want to give us an example? Okay, thank you, Madison. Vowels only. You can take your paper with you. And you can see just how tough this is when you've missed all the consonants. Yeah, please, thanks. Okay, so if you find it, or if you can figure it out, don't yell it out, right? Just let the rest of us muse through it. People have that one? You think you've got it? Okay, hang on. We'll see how we do. It's conceivable that there could be a many-to-one mapping, right? That actually could be a pattern for more than one sentence in principle, although I'm having trouble generating even one. What do we think the first word is over there? What do we think the first word is over there? He? We? Oh, could be we or he, right? Okay. Okay, Meg, what do you think it is?
Here we threw the ball.
I'm sorry, we?
Here we threw the ball.
Here we threw the ball?
Yeah, I like
Threw the ball. Okay. Is that so? Real loud, it is.
he threw the ball.
He threw the ball. He threw the. Oh, he or we threw the ball. Okay.
Yeah.
I was putting all that in. So that's way too many words. He or we threw the ball. Okay. Okay. Very good. All right. So Meg's a prize winner. Okay. Over here, and we'll wrap it up with this one. Okay. I think we got that one. Everybody, really loudly. That one is. All right, and I will see you later, alligators. We're at 1:20, okay? All right, so we'll see you on Wednesday. We've got the exam, and then it's time for here and now after that, okay? Good call, Meg. That was really, I think you're the only one who got that.